Welcome to the Michigan WIC Client-Centered Webinar Series. My name is Karen. I'll be facilitating the webinar today. And these webinars are a chance to share ideas and best practices for providing services for WIC participants that they value and that keep them coming back to WIC. The title for this webinar today is Tips for Dealing with Difficult People. Joining me today is my colleague Lonnie, and he'll monitor the phone lines and make sure that things run smoothly during the webinar today. We did a survey a while back, and we asked you about the topic areas you'd like to cover during this webinar series. And one of the most popular topic areas selected by administrative and WIC support staff was dealing with difficult people. Whenever you work in public service, like we do, this will always be something that we have to do. Although most of our participants, they're great, it's inevitable that we will at some point have to deal with someone who's upset, demanding, or rude. So that will be our topic today. For this particular topic, we also sent out a survey where we asked for your ideas around dealing with difficult people. We asked about your challenges, your suggestions, your strategies for dealing with these types of people. And we got so many great ideas, and I want to thank you all that responded to that survey because that's what we'll be sharing today. I think sharing ideas and things that work really helps us grow and improve our services. And I've also collected some tips and strategies. As part of my role, I get to go out and watch WIC services, do assessments. And sometimes I get to just sit in waiting rooms and watch. I watch and I see how people interact with WIC staff and how WIC staff interact with them. And I'm learning what works and sometimes what doesn't in terms of dealing with difficult people. So I'll share some of my stories as well today. Some of the key concepts we'll touch on today is why people act the way they do. What drives people to be difficult? We'll talk about human behavior and the fact that emotions and emotional needs have a big impact on our behavior and how we in turn act towards ourselves and towards others. I'll share some of the best practices and suggestions you made from the survey as well. Some include listening, cultivating empathy, explaining the process, and encouraging autonomy, and we'll talk about what that means within the WIC setting. And lastly, we'll talk about what dealing with difficult people does to us and how we have the power to lessen negative effects by practicing to choose our reaction to the situation. So we will get started. So during The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy is desperately trying to find her way back home. And at the end of the movie, Glinda the Good Witch says to Dorothy, "You've always had the power, my dear. You just had to learn it for yourself." And I think this is really appropriate for this topic. Often we feel helpless when we're faced with difficult people. The way they act creates emotions in us and changes our behavior, and sometimes not in very positive ways. It feels like with their actions, they're controlling the whole situation. But we have more power than we know. We all have the power to impact other people, to actually influence their behaviors, their emotions, and influence how they act. So if you had one of those easy buttons that made difficult people less difficult, wouldn't you use it? So we have that power, and that's within all of us. And looking at what drives human behavior helps us do that. By harnessing this power and using some basic and simple strategies that we'll talk about today, we can make our jobs easier and more enjoyable on a daily basis, and make our participants' experience easier and more enjoyable as well, which will keep them coming back to WIC. So we asked on the survey, what are your challenges? So here are some major themes that came out from the survey responses. Demanding people. I want it now. Rude people. The word attitude was used a lot on the survey, having a nasty attitude. Participants that are not prepared, they consistently don't bring the right paperwork or tell you, no one told me I had to bring those papers. Those people who miss appointments repeatedly, and then they call and they want to get in immediately. People who are late, impacting the schedule, causing services for others to be impacted. Participants who are only interested in WIC food benefits and not in the nutrition education we give or the counseling. WIC regulations. So maybe they can't get the food they want. They want Pediasure, but they don't have a medical note. Or they want almond milk instead of regular milk. Or maybe it's other regulations. They don't want to bring their children or have a blood test. One person on the survey said, getting them to realize WIC is supplemental. Dishonesty about income, issues of compliance or fraudulent activity. People talking on the cell phone during appointments, taking calls while you're talking or texting. Some of you also mentioned difficult coworkers or managers. So difficult people or situations aren't isolated to WIC participants. You'll experience them in every facet of your life. So these are our challenges. So how do we start to deal with them? Well, we can start here. The secret to unleashing the power that we have is to realize that emotions drive behaviors. Our emotions, and often they're very complex emotions, impact how we act, and often in negative ways. So by exploring human emotion, what drives it, we can impact people's emotions and behaviors in a positive way. And like this iceberg, most of our emotions are beneath the surface. We're such complex beings. We're not always aware of what's driving our own behavior. And advertisers, they use this fact to sell us things. They make us feel a certain way. They target certain emotional needs and emotional pulse points that we all share. So they try to make us feel like we need to buy their product. Cars, potato chips, whatever it is. But we can also use this information to help better understand and interact with participants, and then to change their behavior for the better. Will we always be successful? No. But many times we can change the situation for the better. And when we're not successful, we still have the power to choose our reaction, which will change the outcome. We asked you about some possible causes, what causes people to be difficult. And here are some of the responses. Feeling powerless. And this can cause people, when they feel powerless, to try to gain power in other ways, to act out, to be difficult. Not having options. And this is similar. When we feel we don't have free will or choice or control in the situation, when we feel we're being pushed to do something we might not want to do, or maybe that we're not ready for, then our natural response is to push back. Unmet expectations. Maybe participants didn't get all the food or formula they thought they were entitled to. Maybe they weren't seen as quick as they thought they would or should be. Maybe WIC doesn't have the appointment times that work for them. Vulnerability, shame. Feeling vulnerable is a very uncomfortable emotion. Our mind will often try to do anything to get out of that emotional state. And we do ask for a lot of personal information at WIC, information that we don't often share with others, like about our finances or about our weight, especially if we're not happy about these things. This could be a very vulnerable place. Our nutrition assessment, another vulnerable place. We're asking about behaviors that are often loaded with emotion. So much emotion is behind eating behavior, parenting. There might be shame and guilt involved as well, and that's a very painful place to be. Feeling disrespected, made to wait, treated like a number. Stressful life challenges. Our participants are often facing very immediate and real challenges, sometimes just around surviving day to day. And fear. So fear is the underlying emotion behind most of these and behind many people who are acting difficult. And these emotional states, they often come out in ways that you wouldn't expect, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So let's look at some of your examples through the lens of potential emotional states. Client missed the appointment and no benefits on the EBT card. Client gets angry when her expectation is not met. So that unmet expectation, and perhaps Maybe there's some fear about not having enough. Maybe some shame about her hand in it. Maybe they missed their appointment. But instead of that shame, it comes out as anger. Discussions on weight. Clients don't believe their child is overweight. Long waits to see nutritionists. Some of the questions we ask can be hot points. So on another webinar, we talked about the sensitive nutrition topics like weight. There's this fear people have of being judged. No one wants to feel judged or feel like they're being told what they're doing is wrong or that they're not doing a good job as parents. Being upset with boyfriends or upset with the child, had a hard time getting to the appointment. It's always WIC fault to me regardless of what it is. Who's ever at the front desk catches all the attitude and frustration of that client. And it's true sometimes. Sometimes what's behind this is I may feel powerless over here to affect anything. So I'm going to lash out over here. I'm going to displace my anger to make up for feeling powerless in one situation. So I'm doing this to feel like I have some power over my life circumstances. Waiting too long for appointments. And this is so common. I think one big fear here is the fear of being disrespected. And this, I know, is a trigger for me. Often when I'm being made to wait a long time and I don't get an explanation, I get angry, and I show it. I become that difficult person who I don't want to be. And what's behind it, I think, is I feel like my time and myself aren't being respected. There are children crying, no transportation, asking them to do what they are required to do in order to get their benefits, the need to come to an appointment when they're working, picking up and dropping off other kids. So life becomes overwhelming sometimes. And when people are in that stress response, they're often not thinking clearly. What they're doing is simply reacting. They're reacting to the stressors of life. And often those reactions are negative. But it can be tricky sometimes because often emotions, they don't show up or come out as the same emotion. I change it in my mind to protect myself sometimes. So certain vulnerable emotions like fear, vulnerability, shame, we often change those into other emotions of defense like anger. It's a protection mechanism that we have for ourselves because anger is a less painful place to be sometimes than shame and vulnerability and fear. So for many of us, if we haven't learned how to process these negative emotions or to express our needs positively, then it often can come out in other ways, like being difficult. So this could happen for me when I'm feeling confused. So when I can't figure out the process of something. For example, I might walk into somewhere, some agency, and when I walk in, I can't figure out where to check in or what the steps are of the process. I feel confused. And what does my mind do with that emotion? How it comes out is anger. I go right to this instead. This is stupid. Their processes are stupid. They're inefficient. It's my defense mechanism for feeling vulnerable. And to keep from feeling vulnerable, that confusion, I use a coping mechanism. Or when I feel like I'm being forced to do something and I don't have choice, my typical go-to emotion is, you can't make me. I push back. So like the iceberg, you just see the tip. You see the anger, the resistance, the pushback, but what you can't see is that I'm really feeling backed into a corner. I'm feeling the loss of control. And most of the time, the person that's acting out, they can't see it either. The emotions that are driving those actions are often unconscious. When I feel bad about myself or not good enough, when there's shame, sometimes I lash out. So say I made a mistake at work. Sometimes I go unconsciously right to blame. Well, she didn't give me all the information I needed, or I wouldn't have made that mistake, or, well, I had too much work. It wasn't my fault. So I'm trying to explain my emotion of pain or inadequacy with reasons why. I'm going to anger, which is often a less painful emotion than that feeling of inadequacy. So people have both basic emotional needs. And when we can help meet those needs, we can help people feel better, act better, and make our lives and their lives easier. So what are some of those emotional needs? One is connection and love, confidence and self-esteem. Everyone wants to be their best self, to feel good about who they are, to be proud of themselves, to be proud of their children. Significance and importance. And it's good to know what your triggers are too. What are the emotional responses that make you act negatively or be difficult? And getting that self-awareness. And I think importance is one that's often behind my anger and acting out. So if I'm made to wait or other circumstances like that, or I'm left on hold for a long time, I feel like I'm not being treated like I matter, like I'm important. And this is, I know, is a trigger for me. Security and control, having a sense that you have power to impact the situation. Growth and improvement. It's that human desire to be the best we can be, to keep growing. Understanding and respect. We all have the need to feel heard, to be understood. It's one of our common needs. And when these emotional needs aren't met, we'll react in often negative ways, and our participants in the same way. Especially, as I said, when people haven't been taught to express their needs positively, they might act out in more difficult ways more often. But the good news is that there are techniques we can use to help meet these emotional needs in people. And when we use these, we can often shift that negative behavior. Not always, but often. And they're fairly simple techniques. Simple, but if we use them consistently, they can influence how other people feel and respond. They're quite powerful. Because they're simple doesn't mean they're easy. They're often difficult. So what are some of the techniques? Listening was the #1 response from the survey respondents. Cultivating empathy was mentioned by many of you. Explaining the process. Show me that you like me, and we'll talk more about each of these. Offering choices, asking permission, and apologizing. First, we'll discuss listening. When people are feeling angry or frustrated, their biggest need is to feel heard and understood. So by listening fully to their concerns, we let them know that they're important, that their concerns are important. Sometimes our first inclination when we're faced with anger or a problem is to jump in and try to fix it immediately or solve the problem. Sometimes it's important to let people express themselves fully, get their concern out before searching for a solution. It's difficult to do sometimes to be on the other side of that, to listen to people vent, but sometimes just by getting it out and being heard, sometimes even if you can't solve their issue, it's okay because being heard was the main point, being understood. So here are some of your responses from the survey around listening. Listening and letting them talk before you do seems to help. Always listen to the client in order to understand where they're coming from. Listening to them, typically there's an underlying issue. Usually just listening to their story and trying to help them as much as I can. I think listening is the best advice. So you can listen with your ears, and you can have the body language that says, I'm interested in what you're saying, I'm ready to listen. You can also use your words, and you can use your words to tell them that they have been heard. So taking in what someone said, listening to it, and then reframing it in your words. So that reflective listening. Someone on the survey also called it echoing. It's a powerful way to let someone feel heard and understood. So here are some of your suggestions around that. 1, always stop what you're doing and listen. 2, make eye contact and repeat back their concern. 3, address it if you can or refer to a supervisor. Listen to what they have to say. Think about what they've said, clarify what they've stated, and try to figure out how I can help them. Always repeat what you hear them saying for confirmation. This is helpful so everyone is on the same page and the client knows you're listening to them. Let them know you understand. You're here to try and help them and accommodate their needs if we can, or find them some resources to help. Convey that I understand how they feel. Let them know I will try to help them however I can. So reflecting is a powerful way to meet that emotional need of being understood. But it can also be hard to do or difficult sometimes when someone's yelling at you. So how about this participant statement? It's your fault that I keep missing my appointments. You keep scheduling me in the morning. That's when I have to take my son to school. How can I be two places at once? So you can imagine yourself being on the receiving end of this at the time. So my first emotional response is defense. It's not my fault that you're missing your appointments. But again, if I express my anger, it's only going to bring about corresponding anger from them. And that's not what we want. That's not going to shift the situation. That's not going to change her emotional state. So instead, can we give her a statement back that says, I'm listening? So how about this? Afternoon appointments are going to work better for you. Often when we can reflect what we're hearing, what the underlying issue is, you often see a dramatic letting go of anger. And because their brain goes to, she understands, she gets me. Now I can drop my defensiveness. So let's do a poll question. So how about this woman? Just looking at her changes my emotional state. I think it would take a lot of effort to stay calm with her finger in my face. So let's pretend that she's going to say something to us, and we want to choose a response that tells her that we're listening, that we understand. So first I'll read her statement, and then I'll read some possible answers. So here's the anger statement. Why do you keep asking me the same questions every time? Just check your computer. My answers haven't changed. You're wasting my time. So how can we remain calm and not take that personally? Because she personalized it, which made it especially challenging. She said, I'm wasting her time. And so my mind goes to the defense and says, no, I'm not. I'm working for WIC because I want to help people. Don't attack me. But instead, can we hold back from that? Can we instead give her a statement back that gives her some acknowledgement of her frustration? Help her feel understood and maybe start to shift her emotional state. So I'm going to go to a poll question, and what I'll do is I'll read all the responses, and then you can vote for your favorite. And there's no right or wrong answer here, just some options. So one response could be, currently we have to ask each time. It seems like if they could streamline the process, it would make it easier for busy parents. Or, WIC requires a lot of information each time to confirm eligibility. It can make it challenging for parents and caregivers like you. Or, it's frustrating to have to ask and answer the same questions each time. It feels repetitive. Or maybe there's another response that you find works even better. So go ahead, everybody vote now. And if you have another idea for a response, a possibility, feel free to share it in the chat box as well. And I'll give people a minute to vote. The votes are coming in. You can vote for your favorite. Didn't get that many votes, but I'll broadcast them because does seem to be a winner, and that's the second one. WIC requires a lot of information each time to confirm eligibility. It can make it challenging for parents and caregivers like you. So there's a little bit of empathy there. There's a repeating back to just that you hear and understand her frustration. So I will go back to sharing. Another popular suggestion for how to deal with difficult people from the survey was to work on cultivating our empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand the feelings of another person. Can we say to ourselves, there's probably a good reason for her acting this way. I don't know it, but if I knew the reason, I'd probably forgive her. And this is hard to do, to cultivate empathy, but it's so powerful. Just this thought of, if I knew her reasons, I'd probably forgive her, this thought can help us control our emotional response in the situation. Here are some of the responses from the survey around empathy. Try to put yourself in their shoes. I was at one point in my life, and it wasn't by choice. Be understanding of their situation. I just try to remember when the client is upset, it's usually because of something else that they have going on in their life and not anything to do with me or WIC. Being non-judgmental or non-biased, remembering we all have a story and we are not sure of what that family faced before coming to their appointment. Always remember that these clients have a lot that they're dealing with in their personal lives, and to try and eliminate more stress to them. Keep a smile on their face and always use a calm voice and make them feel valued. I just remind myself that I don't know what happened in their life prior to us coming in contact. And I always remember, we don't know what happened behind closed doors in their life. Try to communicate with them so they aren't going to feel threatened. So we're trying to change that fear, the fear of feeling threatened. Change that feeling from being threatened or scared or powerless so they don't need to go to that defensive place. Feeling understood, feeling empathized with, that it will meet that emotional need. And for us, empathy helps us not go to that defensive place. Instead, we go to compassion instead of defense. And that will help both sides of the discussion and improve the interaction overall. Another strategy is explaining the process. WIC is confusing, and sometimes we forget that because we know it so well. But WIC has a lot of rules, a lot of procedures, and often when people are confused about the process or they're unsure of what to expect, it can appear as anger or exasperation. Sometimes it's embarrassing not to know. It's a feeling of uncertainty. So our brain turns that into anger. It's a protection mechanism. Think about times when you haven't known the process and that emotion of not knowing and how it feels. Say you're doing something new for the first time. It can often feel uncomfortable. Often when I sit in WIC waiting rooms, what I do is I watch for people as they walk in. And I watch to see, is it absolutely clear where to go, what to do? And sometimes I'll see a person come in and look confused. And people also have an anxiety about what's going to happen during that WIC process. So explaining the process clearly, it reduces that anxiety, it reduces the fear, it increases feelings of security, like everything's going to be okay. So for example, you might hear something like, so first of all, you'll sit with me, we'll look over your paperwork, we'll check your income, you'll get you set up on the program, then someone will weigh and measure your child, you'll talk with the nutrition staff about your family's eating and health, and at the end you'll also receive vouchers for healthy foods that you can buy at the store. Does that sound okay? So also with new people, that great explanation about WIC and our process can save so much time down the road. So finding out what they've heard, clearing up any misconceptions, telling them what they're going to need every time, what they can expect every time they come. We also want to think about our word choice when we're working at WIC. We have sometimes a lot of confusing terms at WIC. I remember at my last company, I remember an IT person, and with the words he used, sometimes I felt uneducated or I felt less than, which often caused me to respond by being difficult. But at my new company, most of the IT people, they speak at my level. They use words I can understand because I'm not very tech savvy. So now in most cases, I don't have those same feelings of inadequacy that I had. So we can look at our terms and how we're speaking to people and how we can better explain things on people's level. So we look at our words like C-eval or NCRD, all kinds of WIC language that we might use. Here are some of your suggestions. We will try to accommodate all clients as best we can, but there are instances where we just can't. You can explain to them the best you can, offer them out the benefits where applicable, etc. You can just do your best. Talk quietly so they have to stop yelling and hear. I thought that was interesting. I've never heard that one before, but I want to try that and see if that one works. Remain calm, explain policies. So we said one of our emotional needs is for connection, human connection, that relationship, to feel liked by another person. So if I think you like me, then I like you, and I trust you more. And when I trust you, my guard comes down. I can drop the defensiveness that I built up around me to protect myself. So you want to think about how can you show someone that you like them. Someone on the survey wrote, compliment them on something they're doing well. Take an interest in their family or the child. Ask questions about their family. In my role working with different WIC programs, I often do focus groups. And I talk to groups of parents or caregivers about their experience at WIC. And when people are asked about how they feel they're treated at WIC staff, the ones that respond favorably, they often mention that WIC staff are good to their children and that means a lot to them. So here are some quotes from my focus groups. The one lady always makes conversations with the kids, so they are very friendly. We love coming to this place. My kids love being here. Everyone is so kind. They always have smiling faces and are kid-friendly. They keep my kids entertained. So any way we can make that bond or show them that we're someone who can be trusted and they don't have to fear us, then they can shift their actions and let down that defense. Here are some of your suggestions. I smile and show compassion. Try to get them to tell me what they don't understand so I can help them. At times I chat briefly about my children when they were younger, and this apparently makes me appear I am human. Pick up their kids while they're here. Sometimes just a couple of minutes without a kid climbing on them can ease their tension. Soft speaking and smile. You can also ask them, how's their day going? Or are they having a bad day? We said that one of our emotional needs is for security and control. And autonomy is a word for that feeling of control in our lives. Autonomy means that you have the power in the situation. You have the ability to affect the outcome of the situation. So we want to give that feeling to participants, that they have control. When people feel like they don't have control or they're denied choices, what they'll do is they'll often lash out or act difficult. And they'll do it to try to control the situation or to show their displeasure about not having that control. I think of the word empower when I think about this concept. I want to give power to the participant. What small things can I do to give them that reassurance, that security, that they have power in the situation? So there were a few strategies from the survey to help with this empowerment. And the first is to offer choices when possible. Choice gives people that feeling of power, of personal control. And so where are there areas where we can offer choices? Is it what time of day will work best for them for their appointment? Sometimes even when the choices aren't exactly what they want. So say someone missed their appointment and comes in later and they want to be seen right away and you can't make that happen. Can they still have some form of choice? Maybe you have a choice. You can feel free to wait if a staff person becomes available or if someone else doesn't show for their appointment, we can fit you in. Or if it works better for you, we can make another appointment for you. Or are there walk-in hours that they can come to? And this might not be something that works for your WIC model, but my point is that having any type of choice will help diffuse that feeling of powerlessness, and that often will cause people to act out. Another idea is to ask permission, and this gives people the feeling of control. If it's okay with you, I'll look over your paperwork now and get that into our system. Is that okay? Or to enroll him on the program, we'll also need to take his height, his weight, take a little drop of blood. Is that okay? Would it be helpful for you if I shared some strategies other parents use to wean their babies from the bottle. So that little act of asking for their agreement, of them being able to say yes, subconsciously they'll be more willing to want to accept or act on that information that they do get from you. And some of you wrote apologizing on the survey. And this is a major way to diffuse anger. It's so powerful. People often expect their anger to be met with defensiveness. It's the natural reaction. But on an apology, it often surprises people. Subconsciously, it takes them by surprise. And what it does is it helps to dissipate the anger. When they receive an apology, their mood often shifts. It changes for the better. And often we apologize even when we know it wasn't our fault. And that can take some getting used to. You can think about it like you're sorry for the situation that they're currently in, not necessarily sorry for your individual actions. But when you can apologize, participants react. And many participants, they'll reciprocate. They'll say thank you for apologizing, and then there's this immediate shift in behavior. Some of you mentioned the challenge of cell phones on the survey, whether it's texting during conversations, answering calls during the appointment. And it's something that we all struggle with, and I know I do. So being constantly connected to social media and cell phones, it's relatively new. People are getting better with it, but many people still don't follow what maybe my expected rules are or assumptions around cell phone use. So for me, this one is often one of my triggers, I know. It plays into my need for importance and respect. Say I'm out with a friend for dinner and she's texting someone else. What I'm thinking is, I'm a friend who's right in front of you. Why are you texting someone else? I get angry. My immediate response is to go to anger. And many of you wrote that this is challenging at WIC too. Talking on a cell phone or texting, it interrupts our time. It takes away from rapport building, and it takes away from the effectiveness of WIC services. So what's a good response when someone's on the cell phone? And I have to say for this, I'm not sure. I've never found one that I completely love or I'm comfortable with, but I'll share some of the ones I've heard with you. And I want to know, what do you think might be best for working with participants? So I'll give you some options. I'll read them, and then we can vote for your favorite. So how would you respond to texting or phone calls during the appointment? First is no response. Just wait until they're finished. Or, because of confidentiality, I'm afraid we can't have cell phone usage in the offices. Or, do you need some extra time to take that or finish that? Or, if this is not an emergency, would you mind until after the session is over? Or, we ask everyone to try to refrain from texting or calling during appointments, unless, of course, it's urgent. Or maybe you have another possibility or another response that you like. So go ahead, everybody vote now. I'll give a minute for people to vote. And feel free also, if you have another response, to type it in that chat box. The votes are coming in. Okay. And the votes are coming in. I'll broadcast the results so we can see them as they're coming in. It looks like one pulled ahead, and that's towards the bottom. We ask everyone to try to refrain from texting or calling during appointments, unless, of course, it's urgent. So however you find a good way to share that. So I'm going to go back and share some other strategies. So we talked about participants' responses. And I want to shift and talk a little bit about our responses when faced with a difficult person or a difficult situation. So difficult people can often cause us to change our emotions, and then in turn we change our behavior. We get defensive, we get angry. It's a natural response. So a couple of things here. One is this reaction causes stress in our bodies. Our bodies release chemicals, and these chemicals are involved in that fight or flight response. So like this guy here, his body is right now flooding with chemicals to help him either fight the lion or run as fast as he can away. And those chemicals are really good in this case because he needs to get away. But your body doesn't know the difference sometimes between levels of stressful situations. When you're faced with anger or a difficult person, your defense response comes in and the same chemicals get released in your body. And when this happens a lot, it can be bad for our health. It can be bad for our hearts, our circulatory system, our immune system. And so that's one reason why we want to practice controlling or choosing our reaction to limit that stress response and the harm it can have on our health. Another reason for controlling that emotional response is when we go to that place of either fighting back or being defensive, we change how we're interacting with that participant, and we're giving up our power. We're giving up our power to shift that person and to change the situation. And we don't want to give up that power. We want to harness it. So often people will shift during the conversation. So many times I see it. The difficult person stops being difficult. They'll shift right in front of your eyes. And when they do, it's important to stay open to it. What I see a lot of times is when faced with anger or difficult people, we shift our behavior. Our emotions cause us to then be defensive and to act differently. And what it does, it shuts ourselves off from seeing when this person starts to let go of those negative emotions and make the shift. I see it a lot when people have been made to wait a long time. So sometimes at WIC we have long wait times. When it's finally their turn, they have to express their feelings of anger and disrespect. It often sounds like, how long is this going to take? I have to go. But often if we stay positive, they can quickly let this go and start engaging. I see it all the time. I see it in myself. I come into the room after being made to wait a long time, and I'm angry. And it takes me a couple minutes to get over it. And if the person stays open and engages me, I can let it go. But what I also see sometimes is we don't allow that room for that shift. We internally say to ourselves, okay, this is a difficult person. This person's being difficult. I'm just going to get through this. So in our minds, we label them. And as a result, we change how we interact with them. And we don't pick up on the fact that midway through that appointment, she changed. She's no longer angry, but we are. So staying in empathy, staying open, it's not easy. But it is like a muscle. If you practice with it, you practice staying open and not going to that defense, you will get better at it. It will come easier. So here are some quotes from the survey. Treat everyone the same, and don't get upset or angry just because they're upset or angry. Try to have them smiling by the end of the appointment. So every angry person is an opportunity. Can we look at it as a challenge or look at it as practice for ourselves? Remember to always stay positive. Do not take it personal. Always do your best to calm the person that's agitated and angry. And then stay open, recognize the shift, and then celebrate that. And celebrate yourself for making it happen. We have an awesome power to shift people's attitude, but what it often involves is us resisting our natural instincts. So sometimes staying open and engaged will work, and sometimes it might not, depending on the level of anger in the participant. But even if you don't get the outcome you want, you'll still know that you handled the situation well, and that practice will pay off when other participants start to make the switch and start to engage. So what are some things we can do to control our emotional response, to stay calm, to stay open, to protect ourselves, to reduce that stress, and to cause a shift in the other person? Well, one thing is just to breathe. On the survey, many people use the phrases, be calm and breathe. Simple, but sometimes so difficult to do when you're faced with anger. So controlling our breathing helps control that stress response. And sometimes people use a trigger word to help them breathe. Maybe it's as simple as the word breathe or calm, or you can say to yourself, let go. The second strategy is to use your thoughts. think before reacting. So emotions are faster than thoughts. The emotional response is instantaneous. So you have to make the conscious effort to think before responding to that emotion. So most times, feeling the response might be beyond your control. We'll feel the anger. But then we can choose how to react to that emotional response. If they're giving you anger, it might stem from fear, confusion, powerlessness. It might have nothing to do with you. And so our human instinct is to give that person that emotion back to the person, to meet anger with anger or to meet anger with defense. But you don't have to. You could instead try to see below the anger and give them what they really want or really need. And to do this, you can get your brain activated. And to do this, you can think. You could ask yourself some questions. You might think to yourself, what are my options here for this person? Or, can I see this as a challenge? Can I try to shift this person? Or, can I harness my power here? Or is there something I could learn from this? So by activating your brain, you're activating that logical response and not that emotional response. So you can choose your state, you can choose your response, and don't give up your power and let someone else dictate how you'll feel or respond. Here are some of your quotes around the power of choosing your response. Take a deep breath and listen. That allows you some time to think of the best solution. So time, that's what we need, a few seconds to activate your thinking brain, and that will counteract your reactive brain, which is sometimes screaming or mounting a defense or attack. Just a few minutes to go to that other place with that thinking brain. I continue to smile, have a pleasant tone of voice, and I do not feed into the negativity, but I am firm when required. Deep breathing helps. There are times when you have to excuse yourself, sometimes asking a coworker to finish. Don't take it personally. Ask for assistance from director if needed. Call in backup. So an effective strategy that several people mentioned, shifting the situation by bringing someone else in or calling for a supervisor or calling for a backup. It's not saying that you failed in that situation. It's saying I'm going to do what's needed to fix the situation or to make it better. If you're in a no-win situation, just tell the client you'll look into things and be right back. Take a brief minute to collect yourself and review everything. Then go back, and most of the time the client has also taken that minute to recollect themselves too, and communication works better. Good strategy. And finding strategies like this one, tools that work for you, to deal with difficult people makes your job easier and more effective. Someone had a really nice response on the survey that got me thinking. And it got me thinking about what we're trying to accomplish when we're dealing with difficult people. So they said, people always remember how they feel after an encounter. They may not remember specifics of what you may say, but they certainly remember how they felt after a WIC visit. I always try to remember that and try to avoid creating negative feelings about WIC. Maybe the education is not as good as it should be at the appointment, but my next encounter may be more productive because my client has a positive feeling about her first visit. It's all about rapport, and this can be a slow process. So relationships, and that's what we're doing it with building relationships, they take work, and building trust is often slow in people that have those defenses built up around them. And so shifting perceptions that they will be judged and that they can let those defenses down. So shifting that is a slow process. But by making investments with difficult people, you're setting the stage for more productive visits in the future. And then we'll have more impact on that person's success in changing and adopting healthy behaviors. So I'd like to invite, if anyone wants to come off mute and share another strategy or something that they found helpful or useful, feel free to unmute now and share. And I'll be silent for a minute to let people share. Okay. And I also wanted, the chat box is up. If anyone would like to share that way, that's another way. I just want to thank you so much for sharing all of your best practices around dealing with difficult people. So many great ideas, and a lot of them are simple techniques that can improve our experience, and with not just with participants, but with other people in general. They're simple, but again, it doesn't mean they're easy. It takes work. Harnessing your power is practice. It's not something that just happens. You have to work for it. You have to train yourself. And I'm continuously practicing. It takes self-awareness. So you're constantly thinking, how am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? What does it mean? How do I want to be? How do I want to react to the situation? And as you practice, you'll find little things to help reclaim your power, shift your outlook, to add techniques and watch how those impact the other person. So I want to thank you all for joining us today for this CCS webinar, and thank you for sharing all of your great ideas to make it possible. Thank you, and goodbye.